For the last few weeks, a game called the 100-line Last Defense Academy has been dominating my life. It's an awesome game, mixing fun strategy gameplay with a great story. But there's one problem. As a massive tactics nerd, I can't help but find the game way too easy. Hence, the Minimalist Challenge. I am going to try and beat the game with no items, no upgrades, and no deaths. Any one of these limitations would drastically change the way the game is played, but... well, like I said before, this game is just too easy for me. So, I'll be trying all 3 challenges at once. This video isn't going to touch the story much, because frankly, I think everyone should play the game for themselves. I'll be focusing solely on the battles here, though I will say minor spoilers for the first 100 days of the game. I'll be showcasing every boss you fight, and there's a few that are inevitably spoilerish, but I'll have timestamps to hopefully avoid those. Also, if this video reaches 100 likes, I'll do a part 2, trying to get the true ending with these same rules. With that, let's jump in. The tutorial fights go smoothly, as is expected. We start the game with 4 characters. Takumi, our main character, is usually the best in the game. His moveset can easily deal with swarms of enemies, while also having a great attack for dealing with bosses. Unfortunately in this run, I won't be able to use Air Blade or Impact Stab as their upgrades, leaving him with a simple 2 damage attack. Takumi is still decent with one of the best special moves in the game, but an upgradeless Takumi will never reach his full potential. A tier. Haruko is easily the best character in the game. She can deal massive damage to bosses and get stronger with each enemy she defeats that turn. Her viability is slightly lowered without access to agility potions, but she's still an easy S tier. Takamaru is the reverse of Takumi. Despite having fairly weak splash damage, his ability to gain shields for every tile he moves in is invaluable in this challenge. In a game where kamikaze attacks are the norm, having a character dedicated to staying alive on the no deaths challenge is super helpful. Easily an A tier. That leaves Darumi, who is a decent ranged attacker, but is held back by her low attack power and low HP. She gains slightly more voltage than the average unit, so she has some niche use, but Darumi's only B tier at best. Oh, and Darumi is dead. Mission failed. I guess I should explain how death works in this challenge. First of all, story force deaths don't count, obviously. This is a gameplay only challenge, and if a character ends up dying, I have to reload a save before the death occurred, to keep the deathless run pure. Still, the first boss fight is meant to be done deathless, itemless, and upgradeless, so it's no shock that we managed to complete it with ease. Our next fight is a mission to save Aito, and it's smooth sailing. Then we get into our rematch with Dragon Boy. The first few waves pose no challenge, with us getting fully healed after every wave. And once the boss appears, Aito joins the fight as well. Aito is an easy S-rank unit, with a 3 base attack move that hits 3 tiles. But more than that, Aito's personal ability randomly buffs him after each attack. He can gain shield points, remove fatigue, or most usefully get a strength boost for the turn. This can let him mow through foes, making him our second best team member. Of course, Haruko still manages to outrank him, and she manages to drop the boss down to 14 HP in a single turn. Despite a few of our teammates getting low on HP, we still manage to slay the dragon without too much trouble. Haruko takes the final kill, powering her up further. I end the battle, confident that as long as we have Haruko, we'll continue to breeze through this game. Haruko's missing. Of course she is. Blessedly, before our next fight, we managed to recruit Tsubasa and Gaku into the squad. Tsubasa is usually seen as a top tier unit, But this challenge greatly limits her for one simple reason. Her attack power is way too low. The difference between doing 1 damage to an enemy and 2 damage to an enemy seems minimal at first, but it adds up really fast, especially with characters who have a wide radius of attack. Normally, this is an easy fix. Give Tsubasa a strength potion and she's great to mow down enemies endlessly. But in this challenge, where that isn't viable, Tsubasa is only at the bottom of A tier. She's still a good support unit with decent bulk and can mow down swarms of weak enemies, but the only way to make her a killing machine is to sacrifice 100 voltage to boost her attack. The same 100 voltage can usually be used to wipe out an entire section of an enemy army without consuming any AP, so it's kind of a hard sell. Gaku though, Gaku is special. While he normally deals 1 damage, when voltage is at 100 or higher, he does 2 damage, and he doesn't need to consume said voltage, just for it to be there while he attacks. This makes Gaku one of the best units in the game for this challenge, which is kind of surprising. Not quite S tier, but easily the top of A. That said, this battle is still the first real challenge of the run. Wave 1 only requires a single turn to beat, and Wave 2 isn't much harder. Eito spends 2 AP to defeat his commander, getting 1 back. Takumi spends 3, getting 1 back, and by then we have enough voltage for Tsubasa to wipe out her entire wave with a special attack. The final wave, however, puts the boss out of both Takumi and Eito's ranges. I decide to rush Takumi over to help deal with the boss, but her shield generator takes a beating while I do so. Yet despite some suboptimal plays, I managed to bring down the boss with a series of blows from Takumi, clearing the stage with very little wiggle room. And at this point, I was feeling very satisfied with the challenge, if a little intimidated. You see, I had no idea if this challenge run was going to end up being way too easy despite it all, or if the run would end up being way too hard for me to actually beat. Yet the difficulty of the run ended up being perfect. Hard enough that I had to think, but not so hard that I thought it was impossible. At least, not so hard that I thought it was impossible yet. We'll get there when we get there. After spending most of my free time sleeping or doing simple explorations, we end up getting hit in the head with a pipe, starting a series of events that leads us to the second to last Defense Academy, where our next fight takes place, and here we meet 4 new team members. Nozomi is a healer, which, as it turns out, is really helpful when you're trying to keep your entire party alive. S tier. Same with Kiyoshika. While her normal attack only does 2 damage, that damage is doubled when fighting an isolated enemy, giving Kiyoshika a similar viability rank as Eito. Yugamu isn't quite as helpful, but he's close, with the ability to lower enemies' attack, then deal extra damage when said enemies are weakened. Yugamu is the new top of A tier. And lastly, Kurara. Okay, she's pretty bad. Her turrets can be helpful on occasion, but it's rare to have some spare AP that isn't better spent on her than just attacking some enemies outright. D tier. Sorry, Tomato Gal. As usual, Wave 1 is super easy, barely an inconvenience. Basically just a chance to harvest voltage before the true fight. However, some trouble arises on Wave 2, but not in the way you might think. The game forces us to do the unthinkable, to prove we know how to use items. So, I'm forced into placing a metal fence into a corner, where it will have no effect on anyone. If you want to be a real rules lawyer, the run is dead because of the tutorial. Womp womp. Anyway, moving on to the actual fight, we start by trying to clear out the minions, with Nozomi's healing ability proving itself immediately helpful. Normally, Mr. Spin's counterattack lowers your attack, but by staying out of the range of the whirlwind, we can easily counter that. I, of course, forget to do that until I'm violently reminded to do so. Thankfully, both Kiyoshika and Yugamu are easily able to stay out of Mr. Spin's range, and I even decide to go for the style points by having Kurara use her bomb attack, then forcing the boss into popping the explosive. Overall, one of the easiest fights yet. Then again, now that we're expected to have items, the challenge will actually start to get more and more fun from here on out. Here, I also make the executive decision to have Takumi eat all of the commander kills, since he's available for almost every fight in the game. And I figure that having one unit with really high special attack and voltage gain is better than having many units with slightly above average special attack. And we're dead again, thanks to the story. But since we all agree that story deaths don't count, we can finally move on to Quinzel, the only commander whose name I remember. The battle starts with the team separated, and Eito shreds through Wave 1. Wave 2 is only slightly more challenging, and Wave 3 is a stallfest where Gaku and Takumi demolish the enemy before the stalling can end. And the final wave is more of the same. Kiyoshika almost dies, Takumi uses his mega move, and with the power of gun, we win the day. Takumi gains the force boost, and we enter a funny, goofy story segment where the gang has a comical, light-hearted feud started by Gaku, as all things should be. There were a few mini-encounters while I try to get some loot for Dog Plushie, but set encounters are easier than pie. Wait, I can't make pie. They're easier than making mud pie. On to Mind Control UFO. Wave 1 actually manages to do some damage to our force field, and then the B team begins trying to destroy the generator too. I'm not sure if killing them as enemies would be a violation of the no revives rule, so I decide to not touch that problem with a 6'2" pole. Luckily, by Wave 2, Tsubasa has gotten a voltage boost, and she and Eito manage to clean up the wave quickly. By Wave 3, we're joined by Shoma, who pilots a giant robot that has the highest HP stat in the game. In this challenge, Shoma is decent. He loses access to Counter-Strike, which is one of his best tools, but he can still help with crowd control. Additionally, for the price of a single AP, he can stall the majority of a group of enemies for a turn. His HP isn't unlimited, but he's tanky enough that he should be able to help out. Top a B tier for him. We managed to beat Wave 3 with a shield in the red, and Wave 4 finally gives us back our B team. We start by clearing out the minions, and Kurara gets hypnotized again, but she's weak enough that it doesn't really matter which side she's fighting for. Kiyoshika cuts down the enemy shields, and even as my shield goes down to 4 HP, I manage to cast Mind Control UFO into the depths of the underworld. We have a whole character arc with Best Girl Kako, where she proves to be the only person able to refuse Takumi's gaslighting abilities. And then we enter the Fog of War battle. I'm sure you know how Wave 1 goes by now, but Wave 2 is when the enemies bring in some fog machines. Normally, a few agility potions and jump pads trivialize this segment, but without either option, we instead spend voltage to move again, trivializing the wave in a whole new way. Once the boss finally appears, we also gain our final reinforcements of the game, Ima and Best Girl Kako. Ima is normally a good unit because he gets extra attack when Kako is low on HP. However, when attempting a deathless run, having Best Girl Kako on low HP is a big problem, which limits Ima's helpfulness to B tier. Kako's utility is strange. She can get one really strong attack off a turn, but all of her abilities debuff her after the single attack. Additionally, she loses a lot of power if she has to move into position, meaning Kako's glass cannon abilities are again hindered. Still, the ability to deal good damage at the start of most turns, usually wiping out an enemy for free, is a good way to get some extra voltage. Not to mention that in this challenge, enemy control is actually super important. For that reason, I'd put her up in A tier. Am I biased because she's my favorite character in the game? Probably. But my tier list, my rules. And she genuinely is super helpful. Kako can weaken Fog Machine 3 and Ima can finish it off for the cost of 2 AP. However, we barely scratch the final Fog Machine before ending our turn, and we take a fair amount of damage as a result. Ima finally manages to finish off the device, but that leaves us surrounded. I desperately try to stop the onslaught of minions, but by the start of turn 3, Half of my team is on death's door. That said, being on death's door means they aren't technically dead yet, which means we still have one more turn to fix everything. Nozomi's healing helps patch up our most desperate defensive holes, and we managed to last another turn, though both our units and our shield generator are getting low. This fight continues until I eventually get Kiyoshika into position with enough HP, and we manage to finish off the Fog Commander just in time. In hindsight, being more aggressive against the boss probably would have let me avoid most of this stress-filled battle, but hey, we made it work. As an update on my mental state, I think this is the most fun I've had doing a challenge run. Like, period. Part of it is probably how new the game is, but a larger part is I feel like I'm actually making the game hard, but not impossible. Each challenge so far has had me asking, how do I do this? But never, can I do this? Granted, the challenge is only about halfway over, so maybe I'll change my mind by the end. Quick warning, this next battle is impossible to discuss without spoilers, so consider skipping ahead if you want to remain spoiler-free. Hopefully Editor Geo remembers to throw a timestamp you should skip to on screen. Anyway, time to fight Evil Moko. I know you never saw this coming, but Wave 1 is easier than drop-kicking a yoga ball. I even take the extra time to farm some voltage before defeating Moko 1. Wave 2 though. Wave 2 actually takes 2 tries. The first time I managed to have a friendo die in this no-death challenge. Luckily, this is no Iron Man run, so I can simply pull a Will Smith and rewind time, getting a second try. On my first attempt, I tried to rush the boss, which didn't work. So this time, I decided to focus on taking out the Shadow Clones first, then dealing with Evil Moko 2 last. Ironically, Shadow Nozomi is the worst opponent to face, purely because she paralyzes real Nozomi, the only unit we have who can cure paralysis. Several members of West Team get low on HP, but I managed to clean up all the goons before any of them perish. And Evil Moko only focuses on South Team, the team where Nozomi can heal everyone easily. Our shield turret nearly breaks too, but once again, nearly is the difference between an easy dub and a rage quit. Kiyoshika deals a good chunk of damage to Moko with each attack, and Nozomi can out-heal the Shadow Clone's damage, giving us an easy dub no cap. Takumi earns himself another life sentence, and we're out of spoiler territory. Our next mission has us going on the offensive, where the enemies have surrounded themselves with explosives that can be activated by a sneeze gone wrong. I was initially worried for this stage, as it's one of the only ones in the game with a firm time limit of 1 turn. However, thanks to the handy boom booms that the enemy never bothers to use against us, Wave 1 ends up being, once again, easier than stealing candy from a blind baby. Wave 2 is more annoying than challenging, on account of same turn reinforcements, but since this isn't Fire Emblem, the enemy can barely scratch us, and even with the element of surprise on their side, they're no real threat. And the boss is actually the easiest boss in the whole game. The weird half-bird, half-cannon creature only charges up a super cannon, which we can then interrupt with the power of punching really hard. I wish this fight was more interesting, but even playing with all these challenges, I still managed to get an S rank in defending the battle bus. Nozomi steals the kill, but to be frank, I don't feel like I deserve a power-up after that lousy of a fight. We get back, throw a radical party, and then wake up in the morning to find that humanity is doomed, because of our poor decisions. So next time you feel bad about the mistakes you made while drunk, just think of Takumi and the gang, who managed to get so wasted in this alcohol-free party that they forgot to do their single, universe-saving job. Wave 1 of the fight was easier than turning down those gross white chocolate candies that Miss Adamson used to try and bribe my 6th grade class with, and Waves 2, 3, and 4 weren't much harder. However, after 4 rounds of fighting, a few enemies have managed to slip through the cracks of our defenses, and our power generator is starting to get low. But with one last wave to go, we can easily attack the boss without causing Best Girl Kako emotional damage and Worst Boy Ima physical damage. The boss falls to our onslaught of bullets and blades, and... is it just me, or is the game getting easy again? I mean, our last two fights have been easier than annoying my mother after a sleepless night. If you're thinking this right now, then I have good news for you. The game will get hard again soon, I promise. But before that, we have to do one more random adventure, tracking down a time traveler tyrant and teaching them the theme of terror. But yeah, I'll be real, somehow the time travel boss ends up being nearly as easy as Cannonbug. If I had to guess, this is because we don't have a shield turret to defend, meaning as long as we keep our team alive, we'll be fine. The Time God only has 15 HP, so once we have some voltage, Gaku is easily able to gun him down. Wave 3 starts, we kill the minions, and Gaku again earns his place as an A-tier unit. But we don't have to wait long for our next challenge. After a quick fever dream, we have to fight Best Enemy Girl, Twin Tails, who disguises each enemy to look like a different one. Once you know to look at their HP values, it becomes easy to spot which enemies are dangerous and which are weak sauce. And of course, Wave 1 proves to be easier than, I'm running out of expression. Here, let me ask ChatGPT. Ahem. Easier than finding a unicorn in a haystack. What the heck? No, GeoSage does not promote the use of AI that steals from real people. Please use technology wisely. I am merely making a joke for the haha funnies. Unfortunately, since I am not funny, this note will be the only thing that keeps me from getting cancelled when the joke turns out to not be haha funny. Anyway, Wave 2 is easier than getting AI to give you war crime ideas, and Wave 3 is easier than that. The boss finally appears in Wave 4, and I once again activate my brain juices after watching Kiyoshika die because of my carelessness. However, there's a very simple solution to this fight. Put on your 4-leaf clover, eat some Lucky Charms, and get lucky. The boss loves to hop around to different areas. Sometimes it will be in an area where only Takamaru and Darumi can hit it. Notably, Takamaru and Darumi are both weaker than Hawkman, and can't do significant damage. But if the boss teleports to Eito or Kiyoshika's areas, they can actually deal damage to Twin Tails. On attempt 2, I managed to bring the boss down to 1 HP before Kiyoshika's untimely demise, and by attempt 3 we managed to get way luckier, beating the boss with minimal difficulty. Big scary enemy visits us, but only for story reasons, and we managed to move on to the semi-final challenge. Vexus, the enemy big bad evil girl, starts by trapping all of our friends in a big pod of imprisonment. Since I didn't read the story, I don't know why this happened, but I can theorize that she simply left a bag of Doritos in the pod, which slowly but surely lured our team into the prison, one by one. Luckily, just as Takumi is about to enter the Dorito prison, Nozomi snaps us out of it, helping us realize that they aren't even Cool Ranch Doritos. Also, spoilers for the rest of Route Zero right now. Last chance to leave and play the game before finding out some of the big plot twists. And with that, it's pop quiz time. Who will prove themselves to be the smartest? Will Wave 1 of this fight be A. Surprisingly difficult for a change. B. The wave that proves this challenge to be impossible. C. The most epic part of the challenge by far. Or D. Easier than clicking the like button on this video. Get your guesses in. Answers in 3, 2, 1. To everyone who answered B,
congratulations, you're a failure.
The correct answer is D, of course. We just hide behind the pod for a turn, then hit it really hard. Unfortunately, while we're busy mocking how easy Wave 1 was, Vexus shanked Nozomi, proving that sometimes bad things do happen to S-rank units. But it's only a 50% chance right now, so Eito and Kiyoshika should be fine, right? However, with Nozomi dead, the whole keeping the team alive part of the challenge suddenly becomes a bit of a big deal. I launched several attempts, trying and failing each time to defeat Vexus and avenge Nozomi. I don't know what changed from attempt to attempt. I wish I could break it down step by step. Instead, I'll say this. After each attempt, I got slightly better, until eventually Vexus fell. Fueled by rage and the recklessness of a man with nothing left to lose, Takumi steals the BBEG's power, then lets Best Girl Kako do some stabbing. And with that, the mission is complete. After all, nothing bad ever happens to the Last Defense Academy. And Ito is evil. Who could have guessed that an S tier unit would end up tragically leaving the team for a third time? You know how I said this challenge seemed perfectly balanced? That I always felt like I could just barely lose or win each battle? Well, this final fight isn't like that. After my first few attempts, I honestly began to think that keeping my entire team alive for this fight would be physically impossible. Let's break it down. There are two main issues here. First, let's look at the tier list again. These are the units that are unusable. Notice how they're all my 3 best units? But honestly, that's not the true problem. The true problem is that Ito is actually swole as sin. He cycles through attacks that have varying effects, with his first attack dealing wild splash damage that drops 3 units into the danger zone on his first turn. And if you didn't notice, Ito has more HP than any other foe we've fought so far. He does have one weakness though. Oto is flying, which means a few of our units can deal extra damage to him. Which units? Well, Best Girl Kako can give him a good smack, but only once per turn, and only if she's in range. It's worth noting that Kako is tied for the squishiest unit on our team right now, meaning her in danger zone is bad. Gaku can do super effective damage, but guess what? Unlike all the other challenges here, there is only a single wave, meaning that we don't have any time to build voltage before the main fight, which greatly limits Gaku's potential damage. And last there's Darumi, who, well, she's okay. All 3 of them are okay. But we need more than okay if we want to beat an enemy of this caliber. Was I intimidated by this challenge? Did I want to give up after my first 10 losses? Did I wonder if this challenge was finally impossible? Yes. There was something more. Something deep inside me, the inner challenge runner. I suck at video games. I managed to lose 3 Metopia Nuzlockes in a row. I've gotten dozens of yokai killed in my permadeath runs. But if there's one game that I feel comfortable in, it's a turn-based tactics game. When I have a free weekend, I like to play Conquest Ironmans for fun. And now that I'm playing a game that I both love and hate, a game that I've been saying is too easy since day one, and now the game is finally giving me a true challenge? I feel good. By the end, I had a complete system worked out. I knew exactly where each enemy would move. I even used saves to test out different options, finding the best ones for my final attempt. And in the end, I cracked the case. Oto, who was always a step ahead, fell to the power of a real time traveler. And with that, the game has been won, and the Last Defense Academy Minimalist Challenge is complete. Or is it? Like I said before, if people end up liking this video and want to see a sequel, I'll continue this run, trying to reach the game's truth ending. That said, I'm not even sure if doing that is possible. The Ito fight ended up taking me quite a while, and I can only imagine that the other fights of the game will only be harder. But I'm not one to back down from a challenge. So if you want to see part 2, please like the video. It's the best way for me to tell which of my challenges are enjoyed and which ones are trash. And if you didn't like the challenge but still watched to the end, well, thanks I guess. Leave a dislike and a comment so I know what challenges you would rather see in the future. Cheers!